Hi guys, I'm finally getting around to putting together a little tutorial on how to make this Silver Flyer, which is not so silver anymore. Actually, I painted it black, and good things and bad things about it. Good things, from far away it looks pretty cool, but then when you get a little closer, all the little chips and dings and stuff like that just expose the silver underneath, which is not that big of a deal. I guess it's, you know, the perils of a DIY production. But just to recap on what this Silver Flyer is all about. So, made out of EMT tubing with some couplers and some washers for counterbalance. I've got a Photomate slider, macro slider on top with a quick release plate, and I'll show you guys how to put all that together. The infamous gimbal and how to put that thing together. And that's pretty much it. Got a little bit of duct tape, actually I'm sorry, some hockey tape put on there so it's easier to grip, carry around. So let's deconstruct this guy and show you all the different parts and go from there. See, that wasn't so hard. Boom! All the parts you need. So, let's go through this real quick. It looks slightly overwhelming, but it really isn't. It's pretty straightforward. I'm showing you all of the different parts that comprise the Silver Flyer, as well as the tools that I've used to put it all together. So, starting off, we have your 90-degree elbow metal tubing. And what it looks like when you buy it is it looks like this. So just pretty standard. I think this stuff is made out of, I'm not sure what this is made out of, just metallic, electric metallic tubing. EMT, 90 degrees, and we'll go over exactly where to drill those holes that you see there. So you got two of those pieces. Then you've got a bunch of fender washers. These are 1/4 inch. So the hole's 1/4 inch, and the size of the washer itself is, I don't know, let's see. It's exactly, looks like it's an inch, slightly over an inch, 1.25 inches. So these are 1.25 inches in diameter and a 1/4 inch hole in the middle. And what else we got here? We have some couplers, and these are the couplers that keep the EMT together. So you have at least one coupler, like this, and it basically connects the two EMT pieces together, like so, like that. And then you've got a couple of other couplers, but I'm not using them as couplers, I'm using them as, to put on the ends of the EMT to connect some weights. So the fender washers are going to be mounted on this so that you can create counterweight for the camera. And eventually balance the whole thing together, which I'll show you how to do as well. And what else we got? Okay, so this is the handle that connects to the gimbal, and what it is basically a what is this stuff? I believe it is. Oh yeah, look at that. It's exactly the same thing. 3/4 inch PVC piping. And then you have a 3/4 inch coupler. So the coupler, again, not unlike the EMT, the coupler goes in like that. And what it forms is this. And if you look closely, Here's the end of my 3/4 inch. Here's the coupler, which I've painted black. And I've got a Razor scooter handle grip on there. Super fancy. So look at this. You can see that 3/4 inch is going right in there into the coupler. And what I've done is I ground out with my drill, I ground out the inside of the coupler right here. Why did I do that? So that I could fit my bearing. A bearing does not fit into this coupler natively. Okay, it doesn't fit in there. You could get what's called a CPVC, I think it's what it's called, coupler, which would fit on one end. But what I ended up doing is just grinding it out, and then that way I can make it fit flush, no problem. Now that takes a little bit of work, a little bit of elbow grease to make sure that you know, it fits right. You don't want to overdo it, or else it's gonna sink in a little too far. But that's the result. What else we got? We have your mandatory pliers, and I've got a couple of different sizes of pliers. Got your standard macro slider. This particular one has a lock knob and a fine adjustment knob. Very, very handy for balancing and very recommended for your DSLR. I have a quick connect mount that goes right on top of the macro slider, and I'll show you how to put that on there. And what other stuff? Let's see, we've got hex screws. So these are 1/4 inch, and the length of these, I believe, let's see, this is a 3 inch. So I've got one 3 inch, which will be used for the counterweights, and this one's 2.5 inch, also used for the counterweights. You can really use any size you want, as long as it's long enough to you know, support enough fender washers for your counterweight. So however you want to use that. These screws come in a couple different flavors. You have one that looks like this, which is smooth and then just has thread on a small portion of the end. I don't recommend getting these. They're kind of a pain in the butt. You want to be able to have your butterfly nut, you know, screw it all the way down into wherever you want, have a little bit more leeway on where you want those to go. By contrast, excuse me, you can have one of these, which is threaded all the way to the top portion of the screw. Recommended. These right here. What else we got? I've got a 5/16 screw. This is a short one. It's going to connect to the Traxxas for the gimbal, and this one is only 1 inch in length. So it's a 5/16 at the top, excuse me, 5/16 screw threaded, and you'll see how that connects into the Traxxas. And this is the Traxxas right here. You'll notice that the top portion here has not been modified, but the bottom has quite a bit actually. So what I've done, I'm going to try and get close here so you can see. I've shaved this down. So it used to look like this, like the other side right here. But I shaved it down to the point, actually I'm lying, take that back. It didn't look quite this thick, it was a little thinner than that. But I did shave it down to where it looks like what you see there. And what I used to do that with are some super sharp box cutters. Now you can use whatever you want, but I recommend using this and being very careful not to cut your fingers off, naturally. But I just basically shaved this on all sides, including the tip here, to get it down to where it would fit into my bearing. So here's my bearing, which will be at the top of the handle, and it goes right through and sits like that so that it's fluid. Does that make sense? Cool. Alright, so I think that covers most of the parts. What I left out here is, this is the piece of, here I'll show you. This is the piece of the bolt that does not have a head on it. You can take it off if you want, or leave it on the bottom. It really doesn't make any difference. But this is going to poke through the EMT so that you can connect your macro slider. And I'll show you how that works in just a second. And I think that's it. Can't think of anything else. So let's move on to the assembly. Alright, so let's talk about the handle first. Here's your 3/4 inch PVC pipe, and what I did is I cut a 6-inch piece for this. And how did I cut a 6-inch piece? Well, I've got sprinklers at home, so I've got a bunch of this stuff laying around, and I happen to have also PVC pipe cutters, which are really handy if you want to cut the pipe like that. You just squeeze it down and it cuts perfectly. Not everybody's going to have that, so what you may want to do is when you go to the hardware store is ask them to cut you a piece. I don't think they're going to sell you a 6-inch piece, so you may have to spend a little more. It's pretty cheap to get a bigger piece, but ask them to go ahead and cut you a couple of 6-inch pieces, so that way in case you make a mistake or you want to make another one, you have them on hand. And then the coupler, again, standard coupler. So what I did is a couple of different things. You can either grind out the inside of the coupler with the coupler disconnected, or connect it first and do it later. You don't need to use any kind of pipe cement or anything like that. This fits in really well without that big of an effort. So once it's in, it's in. You can push it a little further in if you want to. That's really up to taste on how you want this handle to, how much you want it to stick out. You can even cut out a little bit more, like maybe an inch more off this end, and not have a problem. So I'm going to show you how I ground this out next. Okay, so I've got my handy dandy cordless drill with a nice bit on there, and my coupler is in the vise right now. So if you don't have this, you're going to have a tough time. If there's any way that you can find to secure the coupler, obviously, so that you can grind it out, that's even better. But you might have to have a friend help you or something to keep that steady. But basically what's going to happen is you want to do this. And you want to keep doing that until you can fit this guy right in there. So you're going to keep doing that, doing it evenly until you can actually fit that in there snugly. Hope that makes sense. Next I'm going to work on the EMT portion of the drilling. And what I have here is basically the one that's completed, which is the black one, and a brand new silver piece. So as you can see by the measurements, the holes, there's two of them. One is the 1/4 inch hole, and then the other is to fit the Traxxas and the 5/16 bolt through the top. So the bottom has the Traxxas, the top has the 5/16 bolt, and what you're looking at here is the underside. So roughly the 1/4 inch hole is going to be at about 1 3/8 inches, and the larger hole for the Traxxas is about at between 2 inches and 1/4 and 2 inches and 3/8. So it doesn't have to be exactly on those measurements, but as long as you're somewhat close, then you should be good. On the silver piece, I've already marked with a Sharpie where I'm going to be drilling those holes, and let's go to that step next. Okay, so I have my EMT in the vise, and what you're seeing here is basically I've positioned it so that it's perfectly vertical, or at least what I consider to be perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's vertical to the best of what I can see, so that the two markers that I placed are pointing straight up. And the way you can tell, or at least you can try and tell that it's vertical, is seeing that the top portion of the EMT, let me zoom out here a little bit so you can see. Here we go. So the top portion of the EMT is as straight up vertically as you can make it, so that it's perpendicular to the vise itself. And once you have that ready to go, then let's do some drilling. So let me zoom in a little bit here. And I start off with a smaller bit. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I'm going to say it's about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit bigger. And we're going to go ahead and drill a pilot hole for each one of these. This is the hard part. So now you're just trying to keep the drill perfectly vertical here over the marker, and you try and start slow, and then eventually get the hole done. Alright, so I punched through the first hole at the top, and once you've punched through, you're not done. You have to keep going. So you have to keep drilling down for the other side. So there we're done with the first hole, and I'll go ahead and complete the second hole and be right back. Alright, so both pilot holes are drilled, and as you could tell, even though I fast forwarded that part, or sped it up I should say, and it's not easy. You know, I mean, without a drill press, you really got to put some weight into it. So I was literally leaning over the pipe while I was doing it. So don't be discouraged. Eventually, it will get through. But just keep that in mind that you know, you need to put a little bit of force into it. So now I have put a 1/4 inch bit on my drill, and I'm going to drill into the pilot hole for the first one to make a 1/4 inch opening for that. So here we go. Got stuck. Put a little more torque. So as you can tell, putting a pilot hole in there makes a huge difference. Being able to drill that in as straight as possible, and you know, that 1/4 inch went through without a problem. Now I'm going to drill a 5/16 in the other hole next. Alright, so before I go any further, I want to clarify something because I misspoke. The hole that I was making here, the second hole for the Traxxas, which is right here in my hand. So here's the Traxxas, part of the gimbal, right? So you've got this side of the Traxxas, which forms the underside of the gimbal, which sits like this, and then you've got the handle, it's upside down, so the handle would be going up, right? This needs to go in here, like so. Now, on the other side of this pipe, you're going to have this screw right here, which actually is a 1/4 inch screw. Okay, so I need to have at least a 1/4 inch on the other side of the pipe. So what you want to do is you want to drill 2 1/4 inch holes, 2 of them, and then we will make this hole bigger to accommodate the Traxxas. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and finish up what I'm doing here. Make sure I've got a 1/4 inch hole going all the way through, and then I'm going to use more than likely something like a 30-second drill bit, which is roughly the size of the Traxxas here, to make sure that it fits in through there. And I'll show you guys exactly how that works. Alright, be right back. Alright, so I got in nice and tight on the holes here so you can see what I've done. So again, just to recap, this right here is a 1/4 inch hole, no problem. This right here is kind of custom. So what I did is I started off with a 5/16, then I went up to, you know, I went just consecutively up larger drill bits, and I would be grinding it out. So the way I would be doing that is I put in my drill bit and I just kind of grind it out on the sides until I was able to reach the right dimensions to fit this guy, which is the Traxxas, into the hole. So now you'll see that it kind of fits somewhat snugly in there, just like that. And that's what we want to have. We want to have the Traxxas fit right into the hole right there. Hope that's clear. I'm not sure if it's in focus, but oh well, you get the idea. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the vise now, and I want to show you, compare this to the other one that I've made. So here's both of them side by side, and this is the underbelly of the EMT, and as you can see, they're pretty much the same. What the dimensions of this second hole are exactly, let's see, we put a tape measure to it. I'm gonna say looks like it's about 1/2 inch, but slightly smaller than 1/2 inch, just a hair smaller than 1/2 inch, so that that Traxxas would fit in snugly. Now, one thing that I noticed is on the top, okay, so this is the top, my first hole's fine. I deburr that a little bit. My first hole's fine. Notice that the hole that I had made on my original one is actually not straight at all. This second one is much straighter, and you can't really tell so much on the video probably, but as far as the angle of that hole, it looks to be a lot better on the one I just did. Now the second hole here, I drilled a 1/4 inch, remember? It's actually a little bigger than that. And sorry for all the ambiguity, but I'm not a professional at this stuff, really, to say the least. So here's my 5/16 bolt, which is going to fit on top, and which connects to the Traxxas on the underneath. So I need to make this hole a little bit bigger to fit this one in there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. So once you're done with all that messy drilling and pain in the butt stuff, you're going to end up with some holes that are, you know, nice and well done, and you're going to want to file down these holes pretty good. What happens is you have a bunch of metal flakes that could be sticking out, still connected, and you definitely don't want those because you will cut yourself, or worse, cut somebody else. So just want to grab a file, by the way. I've got a little file here, metal file, and file those down good until they're nice and smooth. Alright, so let's recap again what we just did. We have this 90-degree elbow EMT, and in total we drilled really 4 holes is what we did, right? So 2 holes on top. The 2 holes on top, the first one is a 1/4 inch hole, this one right here. The second one, which was kind of custom, but it ended up being a, well, what do you know? It ended up being a 5/16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep, 5/16 hole, roughly. And then the bottom one, 1/4 inch. And the second one ended up being about a 1/2 inch, just shy of a 1/2 inch hole to fit your Traxxas. So now I'm going to put this together so that you can see exactly how that works. So, first things first, let's get the Traxxas in there. So on the bottom side, I have my handy dandy Traxxas, and I should probably show you guys how I put this together at some point, and I think I'll do that in just a little bit. So I'm going to take this and put it through this hole at the bottom. So now, there it is. It's in there. And on the top side is my 5/16 by 1 inch long bolt. And you'll see that my Traxxas is right there on the top, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this through. And the way I do it is I put it all the way through, and then I literally screw the Traxxas into the 5/16 bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you want to do that until it is tight. And it's pretty tight right now, but it has play. You see that? So what I do is I grab some handy dandy pliers on the top and on the bottom, and I twist and twist and twist until I ain't going nowhere. So there we go. No play, no nothing. Again, 5/16 on top, Traxxas on the bottom. There you go. And this is ready to accept my handle. Now, a couple things. When you're putting this together, you'll notice that the Traxxas has the ball joint in there, right? And depending on how this is positioned, and let me see if I can clarify that there. Depending on how this is positioned, the post of the Traxxas, because it can either be facing you with the post, or it could be facing you with the ball joint with the lower post right here. This can have an impact on how your camera, or how the Steadicam handles. So because when you're turning around, depending on how this turns, it may impact, you know, how jerky it is. So when we balance the whole unit later, I'll touch up on that a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to show you how I put this together real quick, because that might be some mystery to some people. Okay, so I pretty much took it apart, the Traxxas that is, and you'll see that one piece of the Traxxas here is in my pliers. I've got the little Sputnik satellite looking thing here in my hand, and last but not least, the other half of the equation, which is this guy, which I already mentioned before. I had filed down with my box cutters, and I don't have a spare one to show you what it looks like before you cut it up. But if you have it in your hand and you bought the same one, then you should have a pretty good idea. And let me just get it real close so you can get an idea of how much I filed it down. But basically it's just enough so that you can fit this guy. Where'd he go? I lost him. The bearing, you can fit it into the bearing and it's nice and snug. Just like that. Okay? That's what you should end up with. Alright, so I put one of the stems in there. I grab, sorry it's blurry, I grab one of the sides, bend it over, get that guy in there. There we go. So that's one side, right there. Alright, so I had to rethink about how I did this originally, and I think I remember now. So I'm holding the smaller stem with pliers. I take my needle nose pliers and I grab the ball in the middle and then I push it forward like that and it pops into place. I know it sounds easier than said than done, but you guys will have to experiment with that. I'm not there to help you. Just figure it out. Good luck. So now, going back to our assembly, we have our 90-degree EMT. I'm going to go ahead and put this together right now. As far as the gimbal is concerned, the handle, all that good stuff. There goes my Traxxas. 5/16 bolt into the Traxxas. Dropped it! There we go. That's nice and tight. Next, here is my piece of screw with the with a bolt on the top, and I drop it on the top like so. What is that, you say? Well, that's going to be the place where you position your slider. So on the bottom end, I take a nut and I tighten that guy. Now this may be a little tricky. You may prefer to put this on the slider first, but I just wanted to show you exactly what this looks like. So that's the finished product of whatever it is that you need to do on the top here, as far as with the holes. Simple as that. Again, this is a 1/4 inch screw with 2 1/4 inch nuts, tightening that together with just enough space on top to put the macro slider. And again, the macro slider has a hole, which is going to go on top like that. And if I take my original handle that I created over here and put the bearing in like such. So here's the bearing. And here's a trick that you need to know, is that this bearing, you want it to be as flush as possible, and I explained this in my last video. You want this to be as flush as possible with the coupler here. But for just showing you guys how I put everything together right now, I'm not going to be too anal about that. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this in, and look what you got. There it is. There's the handle with the gimbal complete. Alright, now, so continuing with the installation, I will take the macro slider and screw that on here. Like so. Until it's tight. There we go. That's pretty tight. So that's the next part right there. The macro slider is on, and let's take a look and see what's going on down here. So I screwed it onto the piece of 1/4 inch that was sticking up right there, right? And then what's nice is that this 5/16 now provides a little bit of support for the macro slider underneath. So as you're screwing it down, it's perfect. Right there, it just sits very nicely. And that truly is completely by happenstance. Didn't plan that one. Last but not least, on top, what you can do now is put your quick release plate, and quick release plate screws right into the 1/4 inch. It's sticking over here, like so. I put it on the back so I can move it around in any position I want. Like so. So now the quick release plate is installed, as you can see. So I should be able to move now. If I unscrew that, I can move this forward and backward pretty well. So let's finish with the installation of the rest of the pieces. Alright, so I took the handle off to make it a little easier to show you how everything's put together. But I'm going to go ahead and take one of the couplers, which is this guy right here, and I'm going to pop it in there, and I'm going to take one of the pieces of my EMT that I had already created from the last build, and I'm going to connect it like so. Now, one trick to the balancing that I found is that a lot of people are complaining that their cameras, the whole thing is tilting one way or another, that it's doing this or it's doing that. The cameras are going completely out of whack. And what I've found is that this is a critical piece to the balancing right here. Depending on how much you angle these, they don't have to be perfectly in line with each other. Actually, you're going to want to be slightly to the left or slightly to the right, depending on how your camera behaves once it's on top. So just keep that in mind when we go to balancing. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this, kind of make it straight right here. And I'm going to tighten these together. Standard Phillips head screwdriver. There we go. So now this is what I've got so far right here, as you can tell. Next piece of the puzzle is to take one of these other couplers and use it, actually I'm going to use this one right here, use it to put some counterweights on. So this is the bottom part of the EMT, or the bottom part of your rig. I'm putting this right here, and I'm taking this long 1/4 inch, putting it through like so into the other hole, and just showing you. And one thing I do want to mention here is this other hole right here, which is meant to fit one of these little screws, is not going to be big enough for your 1/4 inch bolt. So you're going to want to take that drill and just make this a little bit bigger with a 1/4 inch bit, and just kind of round it out a little bit more so that you can fit this going in like that. Okay, and actually I'm just going to continue with the assembly right here so that you can see. I'm going to take some of these fender washers, place them in like so, take a butterfly nut, close it up, tighten it down, and here's one of the counterweights. And again, the amount of washers that you use here is going to depend on the weight of your camera. Just keep that in mind, but I'm just putting it together for now. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the other one right here. Just take a whole bunch here and just put them on. So now I have 2 counterweights that I can connect. So let's grab one. And here's the bottom of one of the pieces of my EMT. And I'm going to go like this. Stick it on there. Tighten it down. Like so. Do the same thing for the top. Now, in the case of my camera, I take it to the side like this. But you can, just as easily go down or up. Now, what you're going to find, unfortunately, is that this screw here is going to hit the top. Either side, you can't make it go through. So, this might be a point of contention. In my case, I don't care because I'm just putting it to the side like this. My Canon T5i has a pop-out screen which requires me to put some more weight on one side, but do not despair. Even if it's sticking out like this, no big deal. You can always counter it by putting the other weight to the other side, or by twisting this EMT to one side or to the other side by loosening this. Okay, so there's ways around that, but unfortunately this is not going to point down for now unless you actually drilled the first 1/4 inch hole that we did here further back so that this doesn't interfere. Now, you can pull it out a little bit. Okay, so you can pull this guy out a little bit to where it clears it, but the amount of room that it has to tighten down onto the EMT might not be quite as comfortable here. So, and there's no way to screw it down unless you take everything off and you screw it down first, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it to the side like this, tighten it down, and there we have it. And this guy's pretty much done, except for let's connect the handle. There we go. It is complete. And I'm trying to get it in the frame here so you can see it, but that's pretty much it. There's nothing else to do other than to balance at this point. So let's talk a little bit about that next. Alright guys, well thanks for sticking through with me through this process. I know it's kind of long and tedious, but I think we're almost there. So as far as camera gear goes, this is my Canon T5i, and I've got an 18-135 STM IS lens on there, which is basically the kit lens that came with it. Not a bad lens actually. I'm pretty happy with it. Nothing like a nice prime or something like that, Sigma, etc. But still, I'm pretty happy with it for now. I'm a beginner photographer and videographer, so it's working for me. So the quick release plate that I'm using on the rig, obviously here's the plate itself, and that is compatible with what's on the rig right now. So I'm putting this on. And if you're buying the exact part that I purchased, you're going to want to have the two sides are a little different here. This one has kind of like has a little teeth on the side, and the other side is perfectly flat. You want the teeth on the right so that it'll snap in. Make sure that it's straight. So, let's bring the rig over. Here it is, and I'm going to go ahead and snap the puppy in. There it is, nice and snug. And I haven't done any balancing whatsoever, so I have no idea how this is going to go. So if I hold it right now, here's what's happening. It's actually not too bad. It's actually just pointing down a little bit. I'm pretty lucky right now, to be quite honest. But see, now it's tilting a little bit to the right, so it has a tendency of wanting to go to the right a little bit. See how it's leaning over to the right now? That's not cool. And it's pointing down. So, a couple reasons why it's pointing down too is because this lens is sticking out all the way. So let's try that again. Oh, now look what it wants to do. It wants to go all the way down like that. Or excuse me, all the way back. That's what it wants to do. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and balance it to where the camera stays level at least. It's not going back or forwards. If it goes side to side, we'll fix that, but for now, forwards and backwards, I'm going to pop. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I apologize. I'm just going to balance it up and down. So to do that is you're going to move the camera with the macro slider backwards or forwards. In this case it's moving back too far, so I'm going to move it forward. Let me lock that guy in, and that's a little too much. Go back, and that's still a little too much. Go back a little further. Okay, so now it's moving left down. Let's go back a little more. Okay, so that's a good starting point. And now it's tilting to the left. Tilting to the left. So that's a good starting point for this kind of balance. So I'm going to now adjust this balance here. So I'm going to tighten that on my macro slider. I'm going to pop open the display in my case because I'm always going to have the display open. And believe it or not, with the display open, it makes a difference. When it's open, it's going to balance one way. When it's closed, it's going to balance another. So you need to decide if you have a pop-open display like the T5i does, and I believe some of the other Rebel series, you're going to want to decide whether you're going to be shooting with it open or with it closed. In my case, I like to have it open. So with it open, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold it, and whoa, it's tilting way to the left. So that means that I have too much weight to the left, and the weight that I put over here is to the left. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to shift it to the other side. So I'm going to grab my screwdriver, pop this out, move it to the right instead of the left, screw it back down. Let's see what we got now. Now it's falling forward. So we move it back a little bit. Still falling forward. Let's move it back a little bit. Okay. Now it's going to the right. Gets pretty tricky. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to take these weights at the bottom, which are perfectly pointing down right now, and I'm going to move them to the left a tiny bit. So I'm moving these to the left just a little bit like that. You can see I'm moving them to the left. I'm going to tighten that down. Let's try that again. There it is. Still tilting to the left a little bit now. That's too much weight to the left. So I'm going to change the angle and move this a little bit more pointing down. And again, you're going to have to play with this on your own, try and figure out what works, but I'm basically adjusting the weights at this point is all I'm doing. I haven't touched anything else, really. And there we go. It's pretty level. Works pretty good. There we go. Not perfect, but it's a great starting point. I'm going to point it right at the camera right here so you can see. Oh, now it's tilting a little bit to the left. So it's going to the left a little bit now. So I need to adjust it even just a tiny bit more. Which is odd because it was going to the right before. I'm not mistaken. There we go. Let's try it now. Still a little to the left. Wow. Now it's going to the right. This is the part that gets a little frustrating, is that you will have to make some fairly micro adjustments. But the point is that you will get there eventually. And what I may actually do in this case right now is I'm going to shift the whole EMT piece to the side a little bit. So if it's going to the left right now, let me verify that real quick, because I already can't remember. So right now it's moving to the left. So the bottom EMT is moving to the left. So I'm going to twist the EMT piece at the bottom I'm going to twist that to the right just a little bit. Might have been overkill, but let's see. Actually, I apologize. I wanted to twist it to the left. All right. There we go. And that's better. Now it's tilting back a little bit. All I have to do is push it forward a little bit on the slider. Still going to the right a little bit here. So as you see, there's different things that you're going to have to do to change the balance. And it's going to take some time, but eventually, with enough playing around, you will get there. Can't promise anything, but yeah, you'll get pretty close. Still getting there. I'm going to let you guys go as I balance this, and I'll come back with some more footage of what this looks like once it is balanced. Okay, see you guys later. Okay, so I think I finally have it balanced, and it took a lot more work than I had to do last time, but I think that it has everything to do with how your holes are drilled. So I was just noticing that my Traxxas hole, which is this one right here, is slightly off kilter, and that can cause a lot of problems. So you want to make sure that when the Traxxas goes in and it connects to the 5/16 bolt on top, that it is as straight as it can be, and nothing much you can do about that after you've drilled your hole, to be honest. So basically my final configuration was with the display open. I actually have some weights countering the display right here, and I have some weights that go towards the display right here. So it ends up looking like that. And I'll go ahead and hold it so you guys can see, but it's pretty well balanced. Right there. And so many factors will go into how this balances. Not only the amount of weights, but the angle at which this is turned, in addition to making sure that the lens is in the same position all the time, because if this turns left or right, then it'll change the entire balance of your rig completely. So make sure that the plate is straight and perpendicular to the slider. So the slider also can move left and right. You want to make sure that that stays put. And finally, the weights at the bottom, also making sure that the angle is the right one, and you have to make micro adjustments to get it to work right. And this actually, I ended up not touching it this time. It's exactly straight, so there's no angle at the middle part of the EMT where they join. So that's all I've got for now. Hopefully that was informative for you guys, and if you have any questions, post, comment below, and if you have any suggestions on how to make this even better, then I'm all ears. Thanks very much, and take it easy.